The girl had drawn the same door 37 times. Ethan Cole knew because he counted them. Every sheet of paper in the recovery room showed the same narrow metal rectangle, the same crooked hinge, the same 3 dark marks near the bottom, and the same 7-pointed symbol scratched beside the handle. Some drawings were careful. Some looked as if the pencil had nearly torn through the paper. The latest one was different. This time the door was open, and behind it, Naira had drawn 20 small figures. Ethan stopped outside the medical room. "You've seen that door before?" The alien girl did not answer. She rarely spoke. Naira was small even by Lyran standards. Perhaps 8 years old, with silver-gray skin, dark violet eyes, and pale ridges sweeping from her temples toward the back of her head. 3 days earlier, a rescue tug had found her alone inside a damaged civilian shuttle drifting beyond Halcyon Station's navigation perimeter. No crew, no parents, no flight log. Just Naira, 2 dead power cells, and a distress transmitter someone had deliberately disabled. The medics believed the drawings were trauma repetition. Ethan did not. Because he knew the door. Not from the drawings. From 5 years ago. He stepped inside. Naira's eyes moved immediately to the engineer patch on his jacket, then to his hands. Ethan crouched beside the table. "Can I see?" She pulled the drawing closer to herself. He waited. Lyran medical liaison Terya stood near the wall. "She does not like strangers touching the drawings." "I'm not touching anything." Terya studied him. "You are maintenance engineering, structural systems. That is maintenance." Ethan smiled slightly. "Engineers only call it structural systems when we want more funding." Naira's mouth twitched. Almost a smile, good. Ethan pointed at the paper without touching it. "This mark, 7 short lines forming a broken star beside the door. Does it mean something?" Terya answered before Naira could. "It is a witness mark." Ethan looked up. "A what?" "Lyran children are taught to mark places they must remember. Not places they like. Places where something unfinished remains." Ethan looked back at Naira. "What's unfinished behind the door?" The girl tightened her fingers around the pencil, then whispered one word, "Waiting." Ethan felt a cold pressure behind his ribs. He pointed to the 20 figures. "Who is waiting?" Naira drew one more. A taller figure, long hair, standing behind all the others. Then she wrote in shaky standard, "Mother." Ethan stood so quickly. The chair scraped the floor. Terya frowned. "What is it?" Ethan stared at the crooked hinge, the 3 marks near the bottom, the offset handle. 5 years earlier, as a junior station engineer, he had spent 6 months supervising the renovation of Halcyon's old C-ring. Most of that section had been stripped, resealed, and converted into cargo support. There had been one door exactly like this. It had bothered him because it did not appear on the construction plans. When he asked about it, his supervisor had told him it opened into an empty structural cavity, left over from the station's original build. Ethan had asked for a scan. The supervisor told him the cavity had already been cleared. Ethan had signed the closure order. Then he had watched a wall panel installed over it. He looked at Terya. "That door is on this station." Naira's pencil snapped in her hand. Chief Engineer Mara Voss did not believe him. She believed in load reports, pressure maps, maintenance logs, and the basic principle that junior engineers from 5 years ago should not suddenly rediscover impossible doors because frightened children drew them. "You're telling me," she said, "that an alien girl who has never been on Halcyon Station remembers a door hidden behind a wall in a decommissioned service corridor?" Ethan stood across from her desk. "That's exactly what I'm telling you. Do you hear how that sounds?" "Yes. And it still exists." Mara leaned back. "Records show Naira was born on Kellar Colony 7 years ago. Records can be wrong. Structural walls usually aren't. This one is." She rubbed her forehead. Ethan had worked under Mara for 3 years. She was one of the best engineers he knew. She was also extremely good at recognizing when Ethan was about to become professionally inconvenient. "You signed the C-ring renovation." "I was 26. You were licensed. Barely. You saw the cavity scan? No, that made her pause. Ethan continued. My supervisor said it had been cleared. Who? Director Soren Vale. Mara's expression changed, only slightly. 5 years ago, Vale had been senior infrastructure director. Now he ran Halcyon Station. Ethan saw the hesitation. I knew he supervised the retrofit. That's not what I asked. Mara stood. Be careful. Why? Because accusing the station director of falsifying engineering records is different from remembering a weird door. I didn't accuse him. You are about 3 sentences away. Ethan folded his arms. Then let's go look. Mara stared at him for several seconds. Finally, she opened a secure maintenance channel. C-Ring Bay 12. 2 engineers. No security. Ethan blinked. That easy? No. She pointed at him. That is why no security. The wall was exactly where Ethan remembered it. Gray composite cladding. Cargo guidance strips. A ventilation trunk running overhead. Nothing unusual. Until Ethan removed the 3rd wall panel. Behind it was older metal. Then insulation. Then a narrow void. Mara aimed a work light inside. There. The door stood exactly as Naira had drawn it. Crooked upper hinge. 3 dark impact marks near the bottom. Offset handle. And beside it, scratched by hand into the metal, 7 broken lines, a Lyran witness mark. Mara said nothing. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. I installed the panel over this. You installed the covering. I helped seal it. You were working from approved plans. I still asked about it. And you were lied to. That doesn't make me feel better. Mara examined the door. No station registry. No circuit ID. No pressure seal record. Power? Ethan touched his tester to the frame. A faint reading appeared. He stared. 3 volts. Mara frowned. That line should be dead. It's pulling maintenance current. From where? Ethan followed the reading along the frame. It disappeared behind the wall. They traced the cable into the floor, through 2 obsolete junction boxes, and finally into a live environmental line. Mara's expression hardened. Someone intentionally left this powered. Ethan pressed his palm against the door. There was vibration, faint, rhythmic. He looked at her. Do you hear that? Mara put 2 fingers against the frame. A low mechanical pulse traveled through the metal. Not ventilation, not station resonance. Machinery, running behind the door. Ethan found the manual locking plate, welded shut. Mara swore. Someone did not want this opened. Ethan stepped back. We cut it. No. He looked at her. 20 people. We don't know that. A child drew 20. Drawings are not structural data. No. But hidden power, welded access, falsified plans, and a missing registration are. Mara looked toward the corridor. Opening an unknown pressure compartment without a scan could kill everyone inside. So we scan. She checked the wall. Standard imaging won't penetrate the shielding. Acoustic. Mara gave him a look. You still use acoustic mapping? It works. It was outdated when I was an apprentice. So am I. You're 31. My knees disagree. Despite herself, she smiled. Then Ethan opened his portable kit. He attached 6 resonance sensors to the wall and sent a controlled pulse through the frame. The first return showed metal. The second showed void. The third made both engineers stop breathing. Shapes. Rows 21. Not standing. Horizontal. Mara stared at the display. Those are pods. Ethan nodded. Life support pods. One signal pulsed stronger than the others, then another, then 7, then 16. Not all active, but enough. Mara reached for her communicator. Ethan caught her wrist. Who are you calling? Medical. And security hears the channel. She looked at him. You think Vale knows? I think whoever hid 21 people behind a station wall probably knows where the wall is. Mara lowered the communicator. Then a voice came from behind them. He does. Director Soren Vale stood at the end of the corridor, 2 security officers beside him. Vale looked older than Ethan remembered. Same careful posture, same calm voice, more gray at the temples. Ethan had once admired him. That made the anger worse. Vale walked toward the exposed door. You should have left the panel closed. Mara stepped between him and Ethan. There are active life support signatures behind it. Vale's expression did not change. I know. Ethan stared. You know, yes. Who are they? Vale looked at the door. Survivors. Of what? Vale hesitated. Of a decision. Ethan laughed once. That sounds like something politicians say when they don't want to use the word crime. I'm not a politician. You run a station. Unfortunately. Mara pointed at the door. Open it. No, director. No. Vale looked at Ethan. 5 years ago, Halcyon received a Lyran transport carrying refugees from the Darren border conflict. Ethan's anger cooled into concentration. He remembered the conflict. Everyone did. 2 Lyran factions had spent 3 years fighting over a mining corridor, while civilian ships fled in every direction. Vale continued. The transport carried 106 people. 11 showed symptoms of neurological contamination from an experimental military agent. Teria had once explained the Lyran fear of neural contamination. Memory loss, aggression, permanent sensory collapse. At the time, Vale said, Halcyon had no legal authority to receive contaminated foreign refugees. Earth Command ordered us to deny docking, and you docked them anyway. I allowed emergency entry. Ethan frowned. That sounds like the right decision. It was for 6 hours. Vale's gaze moved to the door. Then 3 patients became violent. Mara asked, what happened? Panic, security confrontation, weapons fire. A reactor coolant leak in the refugee module. Ethan looked at the old impact marks near the bottom of the door. Not random damage, gunfire. Vale continued. We evacuated everyone we could. 21 people were too unstable to move. They were placed in emergency medical suspension and hidden temporarily. 5 years is a strange definition of temporary. Vale's jaw tightened. Earth Command ordered the entire incident sealed. Lyran authorities denied the transport existed because several passengers were political witnesses. If either government acknowledged them, the border negotiations would collapse. Mara's voice turned quiet. So everyone agreed to pretend 21 people were dead. Everyone agreed that waking them would trigger a diplomatic crisis. Neither side believed it could survive. Ethan looked at the resonance display. 21 pods. Naira was here. Vale said nothing. That was confirmation. Ethan stepped closer. She was in this room. Yes. How old? 3. The answer hit him. The records saying Naira had been born on Kalar Colony were false. She had not imagined the door. She remembered it. Her mother? Vale looked at the metal. Solara Nyan, Pod 17. Ethan closed his eyes for a second. Naira had drawn the truth 37 times while trained professionals diagnosed trauma repetition. She survived? The pod remains active. Then open the door. Vale shook his head. You don't understand the second problem. A warning light appeared on Mara's scanner. Life support load inside the hidden chamber had increased. Ethan looked at the numbers. The pods were drawing more power. Why now? Vale answered. Because the suspension units are failing. Naira knew before anyone told her. When Ethan returned to medical, she looked at his face and stood. Door? He nodded. It's real. Teria covered her mouth. Naira did not smile. She asked only, Mother? Ethan pulled a chair close. We found her pod. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Alive? Yes. He refused to say more until he could make the next part understandable. But the equipment keeping her asleep is old. Naira looked down. Broken? Starting to. She nodded as if she had always expected that answer. Lyran children, Ethan was learning, were not protected from difficult truths in the same way human children often were. Teria knelt beside her. Nura, there are rules. The girl's head snapped up. No rules. Teria froze. Nura pointed toward Ethan. Door. Then toward herself. Mother. Then she struck her palm against the table. No rules. Ethan understood more than the translator. 5 years earlier, rules had sealed her mother behind a wall. She had no interest in hearing about more of them. He looked at Teria. I am with her. You are an engineer. Today that seems to be everybody's favorite criticism. Naira reached for his sleeve. Open. Ethan covered her small hand with his. I'm going to try. The pod system had less than 9 hours. Mara discovered the reason. The hidden chamber had survived for years because its suspension network operated at minimum power. Its rescue shuttle had carried a coded medical beacon. When it approached Halcyon Station 3 days earlier, the beacon automatically woke the old refugee system. The pods had interpreted Naira's signal as an authorized recovery team. That was why their power draw increased. The system had been waiting 5 years for someone to come back. Naira had not arrived at Halcyon by accident. Someone had sent her. Ethan examined her damaged shuttle. The guidance memory had been wiped, but physical systems told stories software could not. Fuel burn patterns, thruster wear, heat scoring. He reconstructed the last 6 hours of flight manually. The shuttle had launched from a Lyran cargo carrier, passing through the outer system. 1 passenger. No registered pilot. Autopilot locked to Halcyon. Inside a floor compartment, Ethan found a small recording crystal. It contained one message. A Lyran woman appeared. Older, exhausted. My name is Erin Yin. Naira is my niece. Naira watched from beside Ethan. She survived Halcyon 5 years ago because security evacuated the children first. My sister Solera did not. Erin's image flickered. I was ordered never to return. We were given new identities and warned that exposing the hidden survivors would endanger every refugee family involved. Teria whispered. That explains Kellar. Erin continued. 3 months ago, I learned Halcyon's old suspension line was degrading. I tried official channels. Human officials denied the chamber existed. Lyran officials threatened my family. Naira lowered her head. So I am doing the only thing left. I am sending the one witness neither government can easily silence. The recording focused briefly on Naira. She remembers the door. Ethan looked at the child. Of course, Erin had not taught her the image. Naira truly remembered. The message ended with, please do not make her prove it alone. Silence filled the shuttle. Ethan looked at Mara. We open the chamber. Mara nodded. Teria nodded. Even Station Security Chief Lena Ortiz, who had joined them after seeing the recording, nodded. Vale did not. You still don't understand. Ethan turned. I understand 21 people are dying. You understand engineering. I understand what happens if they wake. Then explain it. Vale stepped closer. 3 of those survivors were witnesses to illegal weapons. Testing by a Lyran military faction that now controls 2 seats on their governing council. 4 others witnessed Earth personnel secretly supplying that faction. Mara went still. Vale continued. This station is not hiding a medical scandal. It is holding evidence that could destroy governments. Ethan stared at him. And that makes keeping them asleep acceptable. No, Vale looked tired. It makes the consequences real. Ethan pointed toward Naira. The consequences have been real for 5 years. Vale looked at the child. For the first time his confidence broke. Naira held up her drawing. The open door. 21 figures. Waiting, she said. Vale closed his eyes. Then the station lights flickered. Mara checked her display. Pod 17 just lost thermal regulation. Naira saw the number on Ethan's face before anyone translated it. Mother? Ethan ran. They cut the weld. Vale did not stop them. That was the first thing he gave back. The door opened 18 centimeters and jammed. Ethan squeezed a light through the gap. Cold vapor rolled across the floor. Rows of suspension pods glowed dim green in the darkness. 21. Exactly as Naira had drawn them. Ethan pushed harder. Nothing. Mara checked the mechanism. The upper rail warped. From the old firefight? Looks like it. Ethan studied the door. The crooked hinge Naira always drew was not crooked because of childish perspective. The whole door had been twisted during the incident. He pointed to the lower frame. Cut here. Mara frowned. That's load-bearing. Only if the top rail still carries load. It does. For another 6 minutes, maybe. She saw it. If we cut the bottom first, the door drops. Exactly. And crushes us. Not if we make it fall inward. Mara smiled grimly. Now you sound like structural engineering. Together they placed 2 magnetic braces, cut the lower hinge, overloaded the upper track, and pulled the door into the chamber with a cargo winch. It crashed inside. Cold air spilled into the corridor. Naira tried to run forward. Tarja caught her. Not yet. Ethan entered with the medical team. Pod 17 was flashing red. Salara Nayen. The woman inside looked almost exactly like the taller figure in Naira's drawings. Long pale hair, narrow face. One hand resting against the inside of the transparent cover. Ethan stopped. For 5 years, she had been less than 40 meters from a public cargo corridor. Millions of people had passed the hidden wall. No one knew, or too many people knew. Mara checked the pod. Thermal collapse in 14 minutes. The other pods were failing too. Can we wake them? Not safely with individual pod power. Their neural stabilizers need a synchronized recovery cycle. How much power? Mara told him. Ethan stared. That's impossible. Correct. Halcyon could supply it, but not without shutting down major station systems. Medical sectors. Docking stabilization. Artificial gravity in 2 rings. Vale arrived behind them. You cannot take that much from the grid. Ethan turned. Watch me. If you destabilize Halcyon, you could endanger 14,000 people. That stopped him. Vale was right. There it was, the real choice. 21 lives against thousands. This was exactly how people learned to hide behind arithmetic. Ethan looked around the chamber. Old suspension equipment. Old wiring. Old coolant. Then he noticed something. The pods were not originally connected to station life support. They had been part of the refugee transport module. Their recovery system had its own power architecture. What happened to the transport reactor? Vale pointed through the rear wall. Removed during renovation. Removed or disconnected? Vale frowned. Ethan grabbed an old schematic. 5 years earlier, the refugee module had been welded into Halcyon's structural ring, because removing it would have weakened the station during reconstruction. The reactor was listed as dismantled. But Ethan remembered the retrofit. One section had been declared inaccessible. He looked at Mara. The reactor is still here. No, I worked on this ring. You also forgot a door, thank you? He enlarged the plan. There. A thermal pipe ending at nothing. A reactor doesn't disappear. Somebody isolated it and erased it from the plan. Vale's face gave him the answer. Mara stared. You left the reactor. It had been damaged. Can it run? Vale said, not safely. Ethan smiled without humor. Finally, an engineering problem. The old reactor was behind another wall. This time Ethan did not ask permission. The unit was small, designed to power the refugee module independently. Its primary coil was cracked, fuel stable, coolant intact, control computer dead. Mara looked at it. We cannot restart this automatically. Good, she turned. Good? Automatic controls are what fail when people stop maintaining them. Ethan opened the mechanical cabinet. Manual field shaping. Mara stared. You have never operated a Lyran refugee reactor. No, that should concern you more. It concerns me exactly the correct amount. Naira had followed as far as security allowed. She stood behind the transparent partition watching. Ethan saw her, then saw the witness mark scratched into the reactor casing. 7 broken lines. Her people had marked this too. Tarja translated an inscription beneath it. Return power before opening sleep. Ethan looked at Mara. That's our instruction manual. That is 6 words. I've worked with worse. They needed 3 things. A stable coolant flow, a controlled magnetic field, a live timing reference for the recovery cycle. The coolant pumps were seized. Ethan used station pressure to spin them backward until the bearings released. The magnetic controller was dead. Mara built a crude analog regulator from cargo lift components. The timing reference was harder. The old Lyran system used biological phase intervals based on heart rhythm. No station computer could reproduce it accurately. Naira touched the glass. Song. Ethan looked up. What? Tarja listened to the child. Lyran suspension recovery uses a cadence derived from an old medical song. Mara blinked. You synchronize medical hardware with music? Terya frowned. You synchronize machines with clocks. Fair. Naira began tapping. Slow. 4 beats. Pause 3. Pause 4. Ethan recorded it. The same rhythm appeared in the reactor diagnostics. He laughed. Cultural insight. Mara shook her head. You are enjoying this too much. I enjoy problems that admit they are problems. The reactor started. For 11 seconds. Then died. Naira flinched. Ethan checked the coil. The fracture had widened. We get one more start. Mara's expression hardened. And if it fails? Ethan looked at the pods. Then we use station power. Vale stepped forward. You cannot. Ethan faced him. If this fails, I am shutting down cargo ring gravity, docks 4 through 9, and every non-critical industrial system on Halcyon. Vale stared. That will expose everything. It should. You could lose your license. Ethan laughed quietly. 5 years ago I signed a wall closed, because someone above me said it was empty. His smile disappeared. I've been licensed long enough. He looked at Mara. Ready? She nodded. Naira placed both hands against the partition. Ethan started the reactor. The coils screamed. Not metaphorically. A high metallic vibration filled the chamber. The magnetic field climbed. 30%. 40. 53. Mara shouted numbers. Coolant pressure dropping. Ethan adjusted the manual valve. The old pipe shook violently. Recovery system? Waiting for 70% field. 61. The cracked coil glowed. Ethan smelled insulation burning. 68. Then the coolant pump failed. Field strength dropped. Naira struck the glass. No! Ethan stared at the pump display. The motor had seized again. No time to access it physically. He looked at the station pressure manifold. If he diverted emergency atmosphere pressure through the coolant impeller, it could spin without the motor. Mara followed his eyes. That line is for compartment fire suppression. Not anymore. You'll lose fire suppression in C-ring. For 3 minutes. Ethan. 3 minutes. Vale stepped to the manual station control. I'll authorize it. Ethan looked at him. Vale placed his hand on the override. This door should have been opened 5 years ago. He entered his director code. Emergency pressure slammed into the coolant pump. The impeller spun. Field strength rose 72. The pod recovery sequence activated. Green lights turned blue one by one. Pod 4, Pod 6, Pod 8. Then 17. Naira began crying silently, but the reactor coil continued overheating. Mara checked the recovery timer. 4 minutes 20 seconds. Ethan looked at the coil. It has 2, maybe 3. No, he knew metal. 2. Mara understood. Station grid. Vale hesitated. Ethan did not. Now Vale opened the full engineering control network. For the first time in 5 years, the hidden chamber appeared on Halcyon's official systems. Refugi Medical Magi C-12. 21 occupied suspension units. Ethan selected emergency load redistribution. Cargo gravity offline. Industrial ring offline. 6 docks offline. Station lights dimmed. Across Halcyon, 14,000 people noticed. There would be questions. Good. Power flowed into the pods. Then station command cut it. Mara stared at her screen. External override. Vale's face drained. Earth command. A message appeared. Yunmacher's system disclosure. Restore infrastructure priority. Suspension Magi is not critical. Ethan read it twice. Then disconnected Halcyon from Earth Command's remote engineering authority. Mara looked at him. You just severed federal station control. Yes, that is extremely illegal. Yes. Vale almost smiled. I believe I can help with the paperwork. Ethan looked at him. You're going to have a lot of practice. Power returned.
The reactor coil split.
A flash of white light filled the room. The local reactor died. But it no longer mattered. Halcyon's grid carried the recovery cycle. 3 minutes. 2, 1. The first pod opened. A Lyran man gasped and coughed. Then another. Then another. Medical teams moved forward. Pod 17 remained closed. Naira stared. Mother? Mara checked the display. Her pod did not complete neurological synchronization. Ethan felt the room shrink. Can we restart? No, not without another full cycle. How long? 20 minutes. Celera had 4. Naira pressed her forehead against the glass barrier, then began tapping. 4 beats. Pause. 4. The recovery song. Ethan looked at the pod. Local manual interface still worked. He understood. The pod doesn't need the full network. Mara followed. It needs a timing reference. Teria, the liaison, already knew. Opened the partition. Naira ran inside. Medical staff tried to stop her. Ethan raised a hand. Let her. Naira reached pod 17, placed both palms against the cover, and began singing. Was small, unsteady, but the pod's rhythm sensor recognized the cadence. 4. 3-4. Solera's heart monitor changed. Mara manually fed station power into the pod. Ethan adjusted the thermal exchanger. Teria joined Naira's song. Then another Lyran survivor, barely conscious in a nearby bed, joined too. The pod began its local wake cycle. Ethan held the failing coolant valve open with both hands. His palms burned against the housing. Mara shouted, 10 seconds. Naira kept singing. 5. The seal released. Cold vapor spilled out. Solara opened her eyes. For several seconds she saw nothing. Then her gaze found Naira. The child stopped singing. Mother? Solara lifted one shaking hand. Naira climbed onto the medical platform. Solara touched her face. 5 years disappeared in one breath. Ethan turned away. Not because he did not want to see. Because the moment did not belong to him. The truth moved faster than station security could contain it. 14,000 residents had seen the hidden module appear on public engineering systems when Ethan disconnected Earth Command. Someone leaked the survivor count. Someone else released Aaron's cording. Within hours, the existence of the 21 refugees was public across both human and Lyran networks. Earth Command suspended Director Vale. The Lyran Council denied involvement for 6 hours, then changed its statement when 3 awakened witnesses appeared, live, before an independent medical tribunal. The border scandal became larger than Vale had feared. Governments shook. Officials resigned. Old alliances cracked. Halcyon Station did not collapse. That mattered to Ethan. So did the fact that all 21 survivors lived. Not all woke without damage. 5 years in emergency suspension had consequences. Some had memory gaps. 2 required long neurological rehabilitation. 1 survivor woke unable to speak. But they woke. Solara woke. 3 weeks later, Ethan stood in C-Ring, watching workers remove the wall panels he had once helped install. No one planned to hide the door again. The station council voted to preserve it. Not as a monument. As evidence. Naira came down the corridor with Solara. Her mother walked with a support brace and tired easily. But she was upright. Naira carried a stack of paper. Ethan pointed at it. Please tell me those are not more doors. Naira considered him, then handed him the first sheet. It showed the same door, open. But there were no figures behind it. Instead, 21 figures stood in front. Ethan smiled. That's better. Naira handed him another drawing. This one showed Ethan, Mara, Teria, Naira, and Solara standing beside the door. Ethan's drawn hair was enormous. He frowned. My hair does not look like that. Naira looked at his actual hair. Then at the drawing. Yes. Solara laughed softly. Ethan pointed at her. You were asleep for 5 years. You have no authority in this debate. Solara's smile faded into something gentler. I remember you. Ethan stopped. She touched the old door. Not your face. Her fingers moved along the frame. The sound. He frowned. The sound 5 years ago, before the wall closed. Ethan's stomach tightened. Solara continued. We could hear construction outside. Ethan remembered. Metal cutting panels, fasteners, workers talking. His own voice. He had been 26, standing less than a meter away from this door. Solara looked at him. Someone asked if the room had been inspected. Ethan closed his eyes. He had asked. His supervisor had answered that it was empty. Solara continued. Then another voice said the scan was complete. Vale. And the first voice said. She looked at Ethan. I still don't like sealing doors I haven't opened. Ethan remembered saying it, quietly. Not brave enough to refuse the order. Not stubborn enough to open the door. Solara studied his face. That was you. Yes, you tried not enough. No. The answer surprised him. Solara did not soften it. You did not try enough. Ethan looked at her. She continued. But you came back. Naira touched the witness mark beside the door. 7 broken lines. Terja had explained its full meaning to Ethan only recently. A witness mark did not mean simply remember this place. It meant something remains here until someone returns. Ethan had spent 3 weeks thinking about that. About responsibility. About obedience. About the difference between being wrong and staying wrong. Station Council offered him the new position of Director of Structural Integrity. He declined it. Then, Mara threatened to assign him the title anyway. They compromised. Chief Engineer for Independent Safety Review. Less impressive, more useful. His first policy was simple. No permanently sealed compartment on Halcyon Station could be closed without direct physical inspection by 2 independent engineers. Mara called it the Ethan Rule. Ethan hated the name. Naira loved it. A month after the chamber opened, workers finished converting the old refugee module into a joint human Lyran emergency clinic. They kept the door. Crooked hinge. 3 impact marks. Witness symbol. Everything. On opening day, Naira stood in front of it holding a pencil. Ethan approached cautiously. What are you drawing now? She turned the paper. No door. A window. Beyond it, Halcyon Station floated against the stars. Solara stood beside her. 20 other survivors filled the room behind them. Mara was arguing with a contractor. Terja was translating 3 conversations at once. Vale, now under formal investigation, had sent a written statement, accepting responsibility for the original concealment and agreeing to testify publicly. Nothing had become simple, but nothing was hidden. Naira pointed at the window in her drawing. New. Ethan nodded. New. She looked toward the old metal door. Finished. Ethan followed her gaze. For years the door had existed because people were afraid of what would happen if it opened. Naira had remembered something every adult around her had chosen to forget. A place. A promise. People waiting. The girl tore the 38th drawing of the door from her pad. She walked to the preservation wall and placed it beneath the witness mark. In the picture, the door stood wide open. No one remained behind it. Naira looked at Ethan. Then she folded the pencil into her pocket. She never drew that door again.